Hola, boo. This is Stephanie. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Touching Corners. Today, we are going to be doing another installment of Finding Your Fab. And I am here with one of my very good friends, John Byrne. And he is, well, John, actually, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself so that the audience here at Touching Corners can get to know you.
Hi, so I am, an internet entrepreneur and also a nonprofit entrepreneur.
Okay. And so can you tell us a little bit about, why don't we start with your website? We'll start with your website, and then I want to get into the guts of your non-for-profit, which is one of my favorite things that you do, in addition to make me laugh and have a good time. So talk to me a little bit about your website. What is your website about, and what message are you putting out there into the universe?
So the website is a political news website that I started in 2004. We predated the Huffington Post, which is sort of the preeminent liberal news site. We do a lot of the same things. We cover politics, we cover issues of racism, gun control, sort of the things that you would expect people to share on social media. And then we do some original reporting, but a lot of what we do is source stories from local markets and sort of make them into national stories. Perfect example was, I don't know if you know the case of Trayvon Martin, yeah, where he was, a young black kid who was shot carrying Skittles, allegedly saying it was a gun. And that was a story that wasn't getting a lot of attention. And we had done a couple of stories on it. And then AP, and then some of the other, the bigger outlets picked it up. I mean, I think the story would have been picked up anyway, but that's the kind of story that we're known for, right? And we kept the focus on George Zimmerman, the killer, who continued to do crazy things subsequently.
Okay, very well. And so you mentioned the Huffington Post. What do you think, separates you from, say, the Huffington Post?
We don't cover celebrity, and obviously it's a source of traffic for any publisher to focus on celebrity, but it doesn't really fit with our audience, and our audience expects something more serious.
Okay, along those lines, who would you say your audience is? Like, when you think of your audience, or I'm sure you probably have the statistics on it, but who is your audience?
So our audience demographically skews, I would say if you put the average person, it would be like a 45-year-old woman with a graduate degree. We have a larger African-American audience than any of the other liberal sites by percentage, which I think is reflective of the organic nature of our site and the fact that we are really covering issues of racism, which, most liberal sites are owned by white, straight people. And so even just the fact that I'm gay, I think brings a diversity of opinions, and also the fact that, my business manager is a woman and a lot of news sites are run by men. And I think that gives it a lot more of sort of a true independent flavor as opposed to, some other sites that are just more sort of corporate. I mean, Huffington Post at this point is owned by Verizon.
Okay. Very well then. So Ariana Huffington doesn't own it anymore?
Right. She sold for $300 million.
Oh, and there you go. Now you have the inside scoop.
Well, and she got out before BuzzFeed showed up, and if it's not worth $300 million anymore.
Ooh, because BuzzFeed is taking over. Is that?
BuzzFeed has a lot more traffic. Actually, when BuzzFeed surpassed Huffington in traffic, they made their traffic statistics private.
Ooh. The juicy scoop. You heard it here on Touching Corners. Okay, so we talked a little bit about your website. That sounds amazing. I want to know how you became this amazing website entrepreneur. Who was John Byrne before he was now John Byrne, the website entrepreneur?
So I started a number of news things. I had a one-sheet newspaper in elementary school.
Wow.
So I was always starting things. I started a newspaper, two publications in high school, and I think 3 in college. The newspaper I started in college in 1999 is still publishing today, which I'm proud of.
Wow.
So I've always sort of been, it's called The Grape, the Oberlin Grape.
Okay.
So I've always been really wanting to start my own thing and work for myself. And I also like knowing everything. So, news is a great in that respect,
Okay. And when can you remember the first time that you really realized that this vision that you had kind of put out for yourself, or I don't know if you actually had a vision. Did you know that this would happen? Like, you know, some people talk about setting forth a vision, like putting it out into the universe and creating those vision boards and saying, this is the person I'm going to be. Did you know you were going to do this from an early age?
As a kid, I wanted to be a teacher. I think I came to the conclusion that they don't get paid enough. But I really started the website because I wanted to be a fiction writer. So I wanted to create a business that ran itself and that paid an income that fiction writing wouldn't produce. I actually applied and got into some Masters of Fine Arts programs in fiction a few years ago, but decided not to go. One of them was in Montana, and I really didn't want to go to Montana. But I you know, in some respects, I'm, you know, you could look at my story and say I'm a person that, you know, had a dream of one thing and then went into the business thing and got sucked into the business thing. But I've always sort of enjoyed more the challenge of business than I do. I mean, I love writing, but it's such a antisocial activity, and I just don't. I can only do it so much before I sort of vanish into my own thinking, and I, you know, emotionally, psychologically, I don't think it was healthy for me when I was doing it all the time.
Okay. Excellent. So you kind of just fell into it, but part of it was through following some of your passions, right? And it ultimately led into what you've since created, which is amazing. John is extremely successful in his current business. I mean, we have the pleasure of now being in one of the locations where he spends a lot of time in, which has a beautiful backdrop, thanks to all of his achievements. However, he also has this amazing not-for-profit organization, which he's created and runs and is super passionate about. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So I started working on PrEP, which is pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's the HIV prevention medication. I had a false positive HIV experience, which is when you get a HIV test and you test positive and then it turns out not to be the case. But for those of you who've had HIV tests, the results actually take a while, you know, the confirmatory results. So I spent a week sort of dealing with I think there, you know, if you, and also in my experience of talking to people who acquire HIV, there's a lot of self-blame, you know, obviously, because it's a transmittable disease that can be avoided. But I just had this feeling, I was like, nobody should have this experience, you know, and it's a completely avoidable experience. PrEP is so effective that there's only 4 known cases in the world of failure. Of hundreds of thousands of people taking it. So, you know, I just wanted to get the message out. And I noticed in Florida, unlike other states, there was just no effort, no public health effort on PrEP, you know, for HIV prevention. So I started my own campaign. I created brochures, posters. I licensed campaigns from other cities. And then from there, you know, I did all this education, but I realized I was running up against a wall, which is that I don't speak Spanish, and this is a county where more people speak Spanish than English. So it became clear to me that I needed to start a nonprofit and have a program and funded and have people in the prevention jobs that were reflective of the community and the communities that were most affected by HIV. And in Miami-Dade County, young Latinos, particularly 18 to 34, are the most likely, young Latino MSM, which is men who have sex with men, are the most likely to get HIV here.
And that is amazing. And you took this horrible experience that happened to you and you have now turned it into something that is huge now in Florida. How many, I guess, participants or members would you say, like, how has your program, your not-for-profit, expanded PrEP awareness here in South Florida? Like, what are the stats?
So we have a program director, and then we have 5 peer navigators that work part-time. 83% of our staff is immigrant, and you know, we also have a trans woman on our staff that's doing outreach to the trans community. So far, we've gotten about 50 patient appointments in about 3 months. We've only had a full staff for the last 3 weeks. So, I mean, it's going amazingly well. I mean, I think the thing that you see is people are desperate to have this tool, this HIV prevention tool, but they don't know where to go. And in South Florida, the levels of uninsurance are very high. So, people think, oh, it's $1,400 a month, which it is if you don't have insurance or you don't go through a program. But for people who are uninsured, they can get the pills for free. So it's a knowledge gap. And as we've been able to sort of educate people that they can get it, people have been excited and essentially coming to us. I mean, one of the most interesting things we found is we're getting people from Instagram. We had expected, a lot of our clients to come in through dating apps, and so the program was sort of focused on Grindr and other gay dating apps. But, people are coming in from everywhere, online and mobile, and we're hooking them up with appointments and prescriptions.
That is amazing. That is such a wonderful resource to have, especially here in South Florida. I mean, John was telling me just before we started the interview that apparently South Florida, what did you say, South Florida?
Yeah, Miami faces off with Baton Rouge for the highest infection rate in the country.
That is incredible. And then in the world...
So PBS and Science Magazine are doing a series on HIV and areas where HIV transmissions are still sort of outrageously high. And the 3 areas they'd chosen were Russia, Nigeria, and Florida.
So there you have it, folks. Clearly, it's quite a problem here in Florida, and John is helping to spearhead the efforts to make things better and improve the quality of life for everyone, I guess, in a sense, but especially for the gay men that are trying to live their lives on a day-to-day basis, which are still facing this horrible disease. And even though now it's treatable, it's still, once you come down with it, it has so many terrible repercussions, and it affects the lives of the person who gets it and then the family members, and it just has this ripple effect, and it can be extremely detrimental to your lives. So thank you, John, for doing this amazing work. Okay, so that is him. He's clearly ultra successful in the person that he is. How would you describe your personal life? Like, what do you like to do for fun? What are the things that bring you joy in your day-to-day life? Like, obviously you work hard. That is without a doubt. The man works hard. What do you do for fun?
I'm in a gay volleyball league. We're actually playing dodgeball this season. I tried to dodge playing rather than the ball.
Hey.
I love to read. I've been doing a lot of reading on income inequality and prison reform. I love to drink.
We all do.
This is South Florida after all.
Rosé all day.
I like to go to the beach and go to the pool. Ordinary things, I guess.
Ordinary things for an extraordinary person. So with that, we are going ahead and conclude our interview for today. I want to thank John so much for taking the time out of his super busy day to come talk to little old me, and both for that and for being a great friend. And I really appreciate you, and thank you for everything. And cheers to our next champagne days. And we will all talk to you soon. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go, and we're going to say bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for checking us out in the next episode of Touching Corners. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, leave all the comments that you want, good or bad. Hey, we'll listen to them. And that's it. We'll talk to you guys soon. Okay, thanks. Bye.